Okay. Zok the Mishnah. Shochei b'Shabbos v'Yom HaKippurim. If you shaft on Shabbos or Yom Kippur, av pi shemischayev b'nafsho shchitasu ksher. Even though you're going to be chayev misa, chayev kares on Yom Kippur, chayev skila on Shabbos, shchita is still going to be kosher. So the question is, what's the status of an animal that's shafted on Shabbos? Even though the person shafting it is going to be chayev, can you eat the animal or not? So Amar Rafuna Dara Shchia Barav Mishmei de Rav. So Rafuna says the following: Rav says Asura Ba'achila Liyoma, that it's usher to eat that food, even though Shchitasur is kshera. He clarifies that it's kosher, but you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. Now again, we're not going to discuss all the practical ramifications. There is a discussion if food is cooked on Shabbos, if you can eat it on Shabbos, after Shabbos. Maybe you have to wait if something's owned by a Jew. If it's cooked for a Jew, you have to wait for a certain amount of time after Shabbos, the amount of time it takes to cook it. But over here we're saying Asur B'achil Yom, it's usher to eat it that day. So the given that we're dealing with today is that a person who shechs something on Shabbos, it can be eaten, yes, be eaten, but usher to eat it that day. So the question is, who is this that holds that it's usher to eat it that day? Says the Gemara, V'nasvin Chavrei L'meimer Rabbi Yehudi. And the Chavrei of Rav seemed to have implied that his basis for stating such was something that he had learned from Rabbi Yehuda. And what we're going to spend the day is trying to figure out, where do we see that Rabbi Yehuda would hold that if you shech something on Shabbos, you just can't eat it that day, but you can eat it after Shabbos. That's what we're going to spend the entire day doing. Says the Gemara, hi Rabbi Yehuda. And we're going to have a lot of interesting concepts on the way. Now, it's interesting, the Gemara Rashi points out that Shabbos and Yom Kippur, obviously when we talk about Shchitasur Kshera Asura Ba'achila B'Yoma, we're obviously dealing with Shabbos, not Yom Kippur. You can't eat it anyway. We're not assuming that a guy's just doing all these averos. He's saying once he does the avera shchita. So the Gemara Rashi says it's comparing Shabbos to Yom Kippur. Just like it's usher to eat on Yom Kippur, it's going to be usher to eat on Shabbos as well. But again, the question is, what's the basis of this? And where do we see that Rabbi Yehuda says this? Hi Rabbi Yehuda. Which Rabbi Yehuda? Amar Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Yehuda de Hachanahi. It's Rabbi Yehuda of the Brisa about Hachana, about preparation for Shabbos. You can cut up vegetables in front of a behem on Shabbos, and you can cut up a nevela in front of klavim. So you have a nevela, you have an animal that drops dead on Shabbos. You're not going to be able to ever eat it. It's mutter bahana. You can use it on Shabbos to feed your klavim. Yehuda merim lo haisa nevela me'erev Shabbos asura. Unless it was a nevela before Shabbos. If it was a nevela before Shabbos, you can feed your dog on Shabbos. If it was a nevela on Shabbos, then it's aser lefi she'eno min amuchan. What does that sound like?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Muksa.
No,
Muksa. Hachana is muksa. Hachana is muksa. Hachana is muksa. Relax. 1 second. Hachana is muksa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer da'achanahi. It's hachana is muksa. I like the back and forth. Says the Gemara, in the word muchan literally means it's not set aside. Seemingly that would be muksa. Says the Gemara, alma kevandalo itkan me etmol asura. Just like this animal was not fit to be fed to your dog before Shabbos, therefore it's going to be aser. So too again, because Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that. The Tanakama says an avela lifnei aklavim is not a problem, even if it dies on Shabbos. The fact that Rabbi Yehuda says you can't feed an avela to klavim when avela that dies on Shabbos shows that since it wasn't muchan, since it's muksa today, since it wasn't muchan, one can argue nolad as well. Maybe one can argue nolad. Well, nolad really is a din of muksa. Right?
Yeah, but specific category.
Specific category of muksa. So since it wasn't fit from yesterday, because what was it yesterday? Yesterday it was not fit for klavim. Nobody's giving a live animal to klavim. You're only giving the animal to klavim after it dies. Since it wasn't fit yesterday, therefore it's going to be asur today. This animal which you shecht on Shabbos was not fit for human consumption yesterday. It was alive. Therefore, you see that that's the basis of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that if you shecht it on Shabbos, it's going to be asur. Not because, again, we're not dealing with a penalty here because you shecht it on Shabbos. We're dealing with the mitzvah that it's muksa. The fact that you shecht it on Shabbos is not a problem here. It's a problem. I mean, you have a bigger problem than the meat you're going to eat. But the point is that it's not the problem here that we're dealing with. So that's the basis. Amalei Abaye, no, you can't use that as a basis. Midami, it's not comparable. The Gemara says something very interesting. The Gemara says the fact that it's missing shchita does not take it out of the category of being muchan la'adam. Something that is a live animal is actually muchan la'adam. It's set aside for an adam to eat. It happens to be missing shchita. So, Lamaisa, when you have something that's set aside before Shabbos, it's two different cases. The reason Rabbi Yehuda would hold that in the case where the animal drops dead on Shabbos, you can't feed it to the klavim, is because before Shabbos it was muchan la'adam. It was set aside for human beings to eat at some point after they shecht it. Maybe that shechita, in fact, will be on Shabbos, even though it's not allowed to be. Maybe that shechita, in fact, will be on Shabbos. So it's considered to be muchan la'adam. Now when it dies, it's muchan la'klavim. That's going from one category to the next. That's muksa. But if it was a category, if there's a regular animal, we consider that, says the Gemara, to actually be muchan la'adam before Shabbos. And if you shecht it on Shabbos, you have a problem of shechita on Shabbos, but you don't have a problem of muksa on Shabbos. And therefore, even though Rabbi Yehuda would say that there you can't feed the nevela to the klavim, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can say that by definition he would say that you can't go ahead and eat the shechita on Shabbos. So we've rejected the precedent, and we're saying as long as the cases are different, we've rejected the fact that we can use a precedent of that case of the nevela lifnei behema. We can't use it to explain why the shechita you can't eat if you shechted on Shabbos, because maybe, in fact, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you should be able to eat the shechita that was shechted on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Mi savras behema b'chayel achila omedes. Is that really true that a behema which is alive, we assume is set aside la'achila? Behema b'chayel lagadol omedes. When it's alive, it's set aside to breed. When it dies, with shechita, it's set aside to eat. Ihachi, so says the Gemara, fine. So if that's true, then again, we would have to say that now we do have a good basis, right? Because then we would say, okay, so just like over there, he lets the nevela be eaten, he lets the nevela not be eaten, so too he won't let the animal be shechted. The problem is that if you hold that Rabbi Yehuda holds that a behema b'chayel is lagadel omedes and not la'achila, right? It seems like everybody else would hold that a behema would be la'achila omedes. Ihachi behema l'Rabbi Yehuda b'yom tov hechi shachtinan. On Yantiv, when you're allowed to shecht, well, if you hold that a behema is really meant lagadel beitzim or lagadel animals until you actually shecht it, then think about it for a second. The Gemara says, when Yantiv comes, you have an animal that's not fit for achila. It's fit for breeding. Now you decide on Yantiv you want to eat it. Now again, it's hard for us to understand because you say, oh, it's set it aside. But let's say you have tarnagolim. Let's say you have a lot of chickens. You don't know how many chickens you're going to need on Yantiv. You don't know who's coming for guests. So now all of a sudden you say all these chickens that are in the coup, they're all there for beitzim. They're all there for breeding. When you choose to go ahead and you choose to shecht them, but how could you shecht them on Yantiv? Even though shechita itself is mutter on Yantiv, you have an issue that they weren't set aside before Yantiv. Says the Gemara, Amar Lo, you're right. So it must be omed la'achila v'omedes lagadel. It must be that what's happening? Animals, let's say chickens, for example, are omed for both. That what? They're omed to eat and they're omed lagadel. So how do you choose which one you're going to do? So how can you shecht it on Yantiv? Nishchita huvera de la'achila omedes. Lo nishchita hovera de lagadel omedes. What's hovera? What's that called? Breira. What's breira? Retroactively, we clarify that which you really intended the entire time. So on Yantiv, you come along and you shecht an animal that clarifies that this animal, again, it's obviously a halachic term because it's not necessarily true in your mind that you had this animal in mind, but halachically, we clarify that when you choose this animal on Yantiv to shecht, halachically, it's as if you yesterday set aside this animal to shecht, even though this animal could have been used for either one. And halachically, the ones that you don't choose to shecht on Yantiv, halachically, it's as if you set those aside, legadel, in order to go ahead. So how's it working? So now Rabbi Yehuda is saying that there's breira. Omedes la'achila, omedes lagadel. Therefore, you can go ahead and you can eat a behema on Yantiv. You could eat a chicken on Yantiv because you say breira that you had in mind. So now, again, at the end of the day, one can go back and one can say over here that what? We can say that muchan la'adam, even if it's muchan la'adam and muchan lagadel, then you can say that what? So now the question becomes, so now what's the story over here? If you have breira, then why can't you say according to Rabbi Yehuda? Now you don't have a basis according to Rabbi Yehuda because what? Because now you can say that why should the shechita be aser? When I shechted it, you can say that I had in mind before Shabbos to what? I had in mind before Shabbos to shecht it on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Rashi says no. Kigon zusha lo shachta edmo umistama lo hinicha menat l'shachta b'Shabbos hilkach uvra shekishkidesh yom delegadol medes. Saying by Shabbos there's no such thing as breira to say that I had in mind to shecht it the entire time. Nobody has in mind to shecht something on Shabbos the entire time. But again, let's not get confused. For our purposes, we just proved that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the reason you could shecht on Yantiv is because of breira. Says the Gemara, it's not true. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold a breira. We're bringing a lot of cases in today, but interesting stuff. So let's just deal with this, and then we'll go back to what we were talking about before. Breira
doesn't work on Shabbos because you're not allowed to do shechita, but you can't allowed to.
So it's interesting. So Rashi, if you look at Rashi, it says lo nishchita, a few lines up on the right. Kigon zusha lo shachta me'etmo. So again, we're saying that Brera works on Yantiv. Since you're allowed to shecht on Yantiv, when you end up choosing the animal on Yantiv, you could say Brera, you had that one in mind, set aside before Yantiv. Umistama lo hinicha menat l'shachta b'Shabbos. Sounds like you can't say Brera on Shabbos. It means you couldn't say that the reason that you should be able to eat an animal that was shechted on Shabbos is because of Brera. It might be for another reason, but you can't say that the reason you could eat an animal is because of Brera, that, oh, you set it aside before Shabbos. Because nobody sets aside animals to shecht on Shabbos. Even if you end up shechting it on Shabbos. What?
Or you for sure would. Because
we're saying that nobody's such a rasha that they're going to go ahead before Shabbos and have intent premeditated shechita on Shabbos.
So that supports Rabbi Yehuda.
Therefore what? Therefore when you shecht on Shabbos, you would say that it would be aser, because what? If you don't say Brera, then you would be aser, right?
So you can't
eat it on Shabbos. Right. Rashi's just pointing out that even if you would say Brera by Yantiv, you don't say Brera by Shabbos. That's his point. He's just saying that even though you would say Brera by Yantiv, that on Yantiv when you come to, we're trying to explain why on Yantiv, because again, if you say Brera on Yantiv and you say, well, when I shecht on Yantiv, that means I had in mind before Yantiv to shecht that animal, so then for sure, when I shecht on Shabbos, which I'm not supposed to do, you should be able to eat that animal on Shabbos, because I had Brera. The fact that we don't say that, it sounds like we're saying that he doesn't hold a Brera in Shabbos, but he holds a Brera by Yantiv. So Gemara questions that because it seems like Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold a Brera ever, even by Yantiv. Where? Again, we're throwing out a lot of interesting things here.
There's no discussion of Brera in the separate Bates anyhow. There's no discussion of it there. It's just either Omedes LeBeitzim or Omedes LeChila. And there's no Brera there.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that specific Gemara, but we're talking about in general.
Now it's explaining.
We're talking about that in general. Says the Gemara. V'halesle Rabbi Yehuda Brera. It's a nice explanation that's why you could eat meat on Yantiv, but at the end of the day, if you're going to tell me again, this is all within Rabbi Yehuda who's throwing around Muchan, who's throwing around Muksa. If you're not dealing with Muchan Muksa, you don't have to deal with Brera at all. If you say that things are just by definition all set aside before Shabbos, then you don't need to deal with, or before Yantiv, you don't have to deal with Brera. You only have to bring Brera into the picture if you're going to start telling me that without Brera, you're going to have problems of Muksa. Says Gemara V'alesle Rabbi Yehuda Brera. It's a beautiful pshat. We learned a lot from it, but he doesn't hold a Brera. Minolan, where do you see this? Miditanya from the following brisa. Now we know if you buy yayin from an amaretz, we said that you have to be choshesh, but you don't have to be choshesh for truma gedola. Everybody takes off truma gedola. It's just whether you have to take off meiser sheni and trumas meiser, etc. But an amaretz, who we're not sure, we assume that he takes off truma gedola for sure. If you buy from a kusi, though, at this point the Gemara is assuming that he doesn't take off anything. So if you buy from a kusi, what happens? And you buy from a kusi. So when did you buy it? I don't know. Let's say you bought it on Friday. Now comes along Shabbos. You want to drink wine for Kiddush, and you realize you didn't take off Trumas and Meisos. So what do? You can't take off Trumas and Meisos on Shabbos. So what do? Omer. Shnei lugan shani atu lahafresh harehen truma. So what do? You say that in the future, in your mind, you say in the future, after Shabbos, I'm now setting aside in my mind 2 lug of this 100 lug, because Truma is 2%, let's say, 1/50th, 1/40th, 1/50th, 1/60th. So you want to do 1/50th. So two lugin, I'm setting aside now in my mind, I'm going to remove them after Shabbos. Asara Maser Rishon, it's not really 10. Because if you take off 2 for Truma, then you have 98 left. 10% of that is 9.8. So now you take off another 9.8 for Maser Rishon. Then you take off 9.8 for Maser Rishon, you got about 88 point whatever, 2 left. Tisha Maser Sheni. So then another 10%, it's around 8 point whatever, 9, whatever. So it's close to 9, Maser Sheni. And what do? So then you can eat the food on Shabbos. Umeichal v'shotza miyad. And not only that, you could even redeem the Maser Sheni. So now you're redeeming Maser Sheni, which you haven't actually separated physically. You're redeeming it and you can go in and eat it, and then you'll bring the money to Yerushalayim. Div Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon are important for us as Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is Oser. Why is he Oser? Because how's this working? I want to read this Rashi on the bottom for a second. Umeichal. Look at the Rashi, Meichal. Im ein lo kelim, Rashi says, Shnei lugin, ein lo kelim, hafish, shahaisa, chashecha, bilel, Shabbos. Shein shows hafish. It could either be during the week where you don't have any kelim, or it could be on Shabbos where Shabbos came and you haven't had a chance to separate it yet. Harein Truma, Umeichal, Hamaister Sheni Hoel, V'yachol letakno ba'amira ba'alma, V'loma harehu mechulal, Amot sheyesh li b'toch habayit. You can go ahead and you can, again, take Maister Sheni and you can say that it's going to be redeemed for something in my house. Lo etilocham l'shtos of lismoch ala brera. By the truma, you could be samech on brera, right? What are you doing? You're saying, I'm going to take it off later. Well, what happens now? I haven't taken it off yet. I have this whole pile of truma. And I said, later I'm going to take off the amount that I need to take off. When you eat now, what's happening? Well, you might be eating tevel, you might be eating non-tevel. Let's assume you're not eating tevel. Clearly, if you say you're allowed to eat it, so you're not eating tevel. What do you have to do? You have to leave over at the end the requisite amount of truma, ma'aser, whatever. What does that mean? Retroactively, we don't know. Every time you take a piece, we don't know if that's the truma part or not. Retroactively, when you finish, we say that retroactively all the stuff you ate was what? Was not tevel. All the stuff you ate was chulin. Why? Because at the end of the day, you ended up taking off the truma at the end. But it was only at the end, once you left the amount that you needed to leave for actual truma, do we say that the stuff that you actually ate was okay? What's that? That's breira. Retroactively, that's showing that what you ate during the time was not tevel. It was chulin. So Rabbi Meir says you can do that. But Rabbi Yehuda is oser, says Rashi, Alma Rabbi Yehuda lesle breira v'chai yishem truma shasa. You can't say breira. If you can't say breira, if you can't say retroactively something worked, then you can't set it aside in your mind. Because then every single time you eat something, the mitzvah says that right now that you're eating it, trumas and maasros haven't been taken off yet. It's only after the fact, when you actually leave the trumas and maasros, that retroactively everything that you ate was okay. But if you don't hold breira, if you don't hold retroactively, then while you're eating it, you can't say, well, when I take off later, retroactively everything that I'm eating now is fine, because Lamaisa, he's concerned that you don't say breira. Says Gemara, Hasam Kidiktani time. And no, there it's not a din in breira. There's a separate reason why you can't go ahead and eat when you say in your mind you're going to take off Chumas and Maasros later. Why? Amr Lo Rabbi Meir. They said to Rabbi Meir, Iyata Mo Deshema Yibaka Hano V'Nimsa Shosa Tvalim L'Mafreya. It's not a din in breira. Really, breira can work. There's a separate reason why we don't let you take off Chumas and Maasros in your mind. And later, in terms of breira, it's fine to take off Chumas and Maasros in your mind. And while you're eating, we could say retroactively, after you leave off the Chumas and Maasros, retroactively you were eating good food, because you took off the Chumas and Maasros later. There's only one problem. The skin, Yibaka Hanod, the wine skin, might actually break. So let's say you ate half the stuff, you drank half the wine over Shabbos, and the rest of it is in this wine skin, and now the wine skin cracks. Now all the Chumas and Maasros go flowing out. You ended up eating tevel. So until you actually physically take it off, where we know that it's been done, now you can go ahead and eat it. But it's not a din in breira. Rabbi Yehuda is not osering because we don't say breira. In terms of breira, it would be fine to set it aside in your mind and eat it and say, okay, based on what I'm going to take off later, retroactively, this was fine. It's a fact that there's a din in the fact that you're nervous that it's going to break and that it's going to crack and that it's going to rip, and then you're going to be left with nothing. Therefore, we don't let you lechatchila eat this stuff in your mind. Says the Gemara, Amar lahen lichashayibak. Rabbi Meir says, I'm not worried about that. When it happens, we'll deal with it. But since we say, so it sounds like over here that Rabbi Yehuda, one second, would in fact agree to what? One can argue that he does hold a breira, right? If you say inema miditanya, you can say that that's a separate reason. So we don't know yet if Rabbi Meir holds of, we don't know if Rabbi Yehuda holds of breira or not. You can't prove from this case that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold a breira. Right? We tried to bring this as a proof that says Rabbi Yehuda lesle breira. We said you can't prove in the fact. We said the fact that he's oser you to eat this, it must be that he doesn't hold the breira. No, he doesn't let you eat it for a separate reason, because the wine might spill. But we don't necessarily hold what he holds by breira now. We don't know what he holds by breira yet. That was this case. Yeah.
So what happens if it spills? So the truma spilled out also. What's the big deal?
The point is that the Gemara sounds like if it spills before you actually physically, no, because if you physically separate it and then it spills, it sounds like the Gemara is saying that would be okay. Yeah. But if you in your mind separated it and before you physically separated it spilled, now you have achrayus for it. And now everything else that you ate was tevel.
You never separate.
There's nothing left to separate.
Oh,
again, what are you doing here? You're eating you're drinking the stuff on Shabbos. You're leaving the leftover after Shabbos. You're physically going to go ahead and separate that. If it's not here anymore, Rabbi Meir says that.
So if he took out the wine, he couldn't do this.
You can't take out the wine because it's Shabbos. That's the point. Or as Rashi says, you don't have a kli to actually, if you physically take it out, for sure you can eat it. That's separating Trumas and Maasros. It's here that you want to say that you couldn't physically separate it. So now he's choshesh, not because of breira, he's choshesh that it's going to spill out before you physically separate it. And then the mafreya, you're going to end up having eaten tevel. So you don't see anything about breira for Rabbi Yehuda, so we still don't have anything about breira. So it says a Gemara, Ela miditani ayo. Where do we see about breira? By Rabbi Yehuda from the brisa of ayo. Ditani ayo, this is a very interesting brisa over here. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein adam masna al shnei dvarim ke'echad. You can't be masna on two things at once. What's the case here? Watch, it's a very interesting case. You have the city here. Now we know that you can walk 2,000 amos out of the city in any direction. But if you walk 1,000 amos in this direction, you can't now walk 2,000 in that direction. You can walk 1,000 this way, 1,000 this way, but you can walk up to 2,000 cumulatively in any of the four directions. We also know that something called, 2,000. You can't walk 2,000 this way and 2,000 this way and 2,000. I think it's 2,000 total. Therefore, what do we say here? If you can also establish your residency before Shabbos up to 2,000 amos outside. So again, until now I could walk here. Before Shabbos, I could put something here. Now that establishes my residency, and now I could walk another 2,000 amos this way. So what happens if you hear that there's a chacham coming to town, but he's not actually coming to town? He's coming, let's say there's another town over here, right? There's another town, well, Hamilton, let's say. So let's say, if I could borrow this, let's say there's another town over here, right?
Woodbridge.
And it's, what? Woodbridge. So you have here, so now for sure you could go up to here. There's another town over here, which is less than 2,000 amos from here, okay? So you hear that the chacham might be coming here on Shabbos. The problem is you also hear that there might be a chacham coming here on Shabbos, the other way. So now the question becomes, you put an eruv here, and you put an eruv here. On Shabbos, you're going to find out where the chacham came. Well,
Find out.
somebody will tell you. If he tells you that he's here, then you're going to want this eruv to kick into effect, and you're going to want to go here. If you find out that he was here, that he's here, you're going to want this eruv to come out. So you're setting up two eruvim, and only after the fact, after Shabbos starts, do you retroactively want to clarify that this is the real eruv that you want it to work. Because again, if this eruv is the one you want to work, then you can't have this eruv too. If you want this eruv to work, you can't have this one too. So you're setting up the eruvim before Shabbos, but it's only kicking in after Shabbos starts, retroactively, lemaisa, which eruv you want it to work. Fascinating case. So it says in Gemara, Eina da masnal shnei dvarim ke'echad. You can't be masna on two things at once. Ela what? Imba chacham lemizrach, eruvav lemizrach. Lemarav, eruve, lemarav. That means you can do this. So again, you find out on Shabbos that the chacham went here. So lemaisa, I think the first case actually is that there's one chacham. Let's see. Eina damasna. Let's see Rashi for a second. Be'eruvin. Look at Rashi, this first wide line. Amrinan, man adam al eruva meniach shnei eruvin echad besof apayim lemizrach. Umeniach shnei eruvin echad besof apayim lemizrach ero ve'echad besof apayim lemarav. Ve'omer imba chacham. So we don't know. We know there's only one guy coming. There's only one Rabbi Sachs coming. We just don't know if he's going to Hamilton, or he's going to, it's the only city I know in Toronto, I don't know. Or he's going to another city, he's going to Mississauga. Fine. Which way is he going? So the Gemara says, Im ba chacham lemizrach, shaya chacham atid lavo mimakom acher velishbot chutz letchum velidrosh, eruve shal mizrach yikne li, shvitza lemizrach, ve'eye b'shabis b'makom eruvi, v'yesh li misham v'hala apayim. So again, if Rabbi Sachs ends up coming over there, then I want this eruv to go into effect on Shabbos, and now I go up there, and if I hear that he ended up changing his plans, or I didn't know where he was going, I heard he's coming to town, I didn't know where, and I heard that he ended up going to Mississauga, so then what? V'yesh li misham v'hala apayim, v'yimagidu li shebach so only one of these two will kick in on Shabbos. Now that'll work only if it's one. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Because that what? Aval, but if yavo shnei chachamim zel mizrach v'zel marav le'eza mehem she'ertze evcher halichasi v'al shem breira shel machar yikne li eruve hayom. That means, according to the Chacham, according to the Tanakama, I can do this even tomorrow. I can decide. That means, in the first case, I don't know where he's going. When I find out where he's going, everybody agrees that I can say retroactively that's the one that I wanted to work. But let's say I know two Chacham are coming, and I don't know which one's going to be where. So I decide tomorrow I'll make the decision which one, or I haven't decided which one I want to hear yet. Rabbi Sachs and the other chief rabbi is coming. So tomorrow I'll decide I want this one to kick in or this one to kick in. Chachamim say you could do that as well. Rabbi Yehuda says in that case you can't do it. Why? Because think about it. Today I'm making the decision that's affecting the eruv kicking in. When I have to decide Shabbos morning which one I want to go to, or Friday night which one I want to go to, I'm deciding something on Shabbos, the Gemara is going to tell us. I'm deciding something on Shabbos which is affecting this eruv. As opposed to, in the first case, I'm not deciding anything on Shabbos. I already decided before Shabbos I'm going wherever the Chacham is. I'm just waiting for the information on Shabbos as to where the Chacham actually is. As opposed to here, I'm actually making the decision on Shabbos where I want to go. Right? I have all the information before Shabbos.
But both Eruvin are set already?
I'm putting both up on Friday. And I'm saying, the first case, I'm saying wherever the Chacham is, that's the eruv that I want. So already before Shabbos, I've done everything. I'm not making any decisions on Shabbos. The decision's already been made. It's wherever he decides to go. He's going somewhere before Shabbos. I'm just not going to get the information until Shabbos. That review just says it's fine. But in the second case, where I set up two eruvim, because there are two chachamim coming, and then on Shabbos morning, I'm going to decide which one I want to go to, that I can't do, because on Shabbos, I'm making a decision. We're not breira to before Shabbos. In the first case, everything was set before Shabbos. I just didn't have the information as to where he is. What?
Both the Eruvim are still also there.
But I can only choose one. So now I'm deciding on Shabbos that I want to use this eruv. I didn't decide yesterday that I wanted to use this Eruv. I need to decide, one of the Eruvim, the halach is the Eruv needs to be set up before
What's
Shabbos.
the malacha?
You can't set up an Eruv before Shabbos. You have to set up your...
already.
But you have two Eruvim here. You haven't set one up yet.
exist
It doesn't exist until you actually set it up. You set them up, but you can't set up two Eruvim because you can't set up an Eruv on this side for 2,000 and on this side for 2,000. You need one of them. You just haven't decided yet which one you want to exist. On Shabbos, you decide, I want this one to take effect. Says Rabbi Yehuda, you can't do that. Chamim say, what are you talking about? Rabbi Black says you set them up both before Shabbos. It's just kicking in. You understand the difference between the two cases?
Brera. They took.
Again, in the first case,
No, the two
the
cases.
Matthias says that in both cases, we set up the Eruv before
There's
Shabbos.
two matzah boxes.
There are two matzah boxes on either side. There's a matzah box and there's a matzah box.
Before Shabbos.
Before
In both
Shabbos,
cases.
they're both there. Only one of them can kick in when Shabbos starts.
That's right.
Right? In the first case, one of them kicked in. I just don't know which one kicked in. Because I don't know where the Chacham is.
You're not making
I made it tonight that when I put it on there, Brera is going to teach me that wherever the Chacham ends up going, that's the one that I wanted retroactively to kick in a second before Shabbos. So when Rabbi Sack shows up here an hour before Shabbos, by definition, without me knowing it, this one kicked in and this one is Gordon. This one's not here.
That's not
This is the one that I actually set aside. Okay, one second. We're not. Let's just see. 1 second. This one kicked in, right? In the case where I say, well, two Chacham are coming, and I'm going to decide on Shabbos morning, you're making the Eruv kick in on Shabbos morning. It wasn't set before Shabbos. That you can't do. You can't establish your residence. If I don't set up an Eruv before Shabbos, I can't walk on Shabbos 1999 Amos and put down a box and say now I can walk another 2,000 Amos, which is what you're doing in this case, because you haven't decided until Shabbos morning which Eruv you want to take effect. In the first case, you decided which one you want to take effect. You just don't know which one you decided. On Shabbos morning, I'm now deciding I want to go to that guy, but I could have just as easily woken up Shabbos morning and say I want this Eruv to go into effect. In the first case, I'm not making that decision Shabbos morning. It was made before Shabbos started. I just didn't know which one I decided. That's Brera. I didn't know which one I decided before Shabbos. Retroactively, when I find out on Shabbos that he's here, retroactively yesterday I set aside this one. If I find out he's here on Shabbos, retroactively I set aside this one. If there are two Chachamim, I didn't retroactively set aside anything because I'm not deciding until Shabbos morning which one I want to go to. And it's Ki'ilu, I walk 1999 Amos on Shabbos morning and put it down here when I decide I want to go here. That you can't do. Sorry, I keep banging the thing. Okay. Says the Gemara. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda. Start banging me. You can't make this Tanai. In Bachacham lemizrach eruva lemizrach lemara eruva lemara ve'ilu lekanu lekan lo. He says no. If they go to both, it doesn't work. Vavina ba my shna lekanu lekan delo de'ain brera mizrach umara of nami ein brera. The Gemara is asking Rabbi Black's question. I understand. Memanashach. If you hold the brera, right? So then even if there are two chachamim, brera just say retroactively. When I decide on Shabbos morning to go to this guy, to this chacham, retroactively yesh brera, I put it aside yesterday. What's the difference? Says the Gemara. Rashi, Kishayavo Lamacha Lemizrach Shema Ben Ashmasha Lohaita Daito Lakach, Vekana Lo Eruva Shalmar, Varehu Kamisha Shavas Bemar, Vmakom Nosa Shvisa, Yeshu Alpayim Lachorav, Nimso Alpayim Achronas Amizrachos Kalos Lebeso, Ben Lebeso Mar, Mizrach Mar Nar, Kishina Al Chacham Echad, etc. Says the Gemara, it's a different case. It's not a din in Brera. Va'amar Rav Yehochanan Ukvar Bachacham. Says the Gemara, Rashi, Masnisan Bahachi Askinan, Shekvar Bachacham Kodem Kinyan Eruv. Aval zelo yada lehechan ba ve'ein kan sarich brera shekach manna litzat shechacham ba yeruve konev in a davar toyel goloi milsak sheyidu lamachar shemizrach ba nimsa shekana eruv hamizrachi. That means the case we were dealing with until now was I put out the eruvs on Friday morning. The chacham doesn't come till Friday afternoon. There you need to say brera. That means again I put out the eruvs Friday morning. And then we're going to say retroactively, whichever one he ends up coming to, even though it's not happening on Shabbos. Whenever he comes Friday afternoon, retroactively, that's the one that I set up the Eruv for on Shabbos, right? That's the din in Brera. Therefore, we say, well, if you hold that you could do that, then what's the difference? Who cares on Shabbos morning that I decide to go to this one? That means that retroactively on Friday morning when I set up the Eruv, I had in mind this one. If you're going to say Yesh Brera, you should say Yesh Brera across the board. The Gemara says, I agree. And therefore, why does Rabbi Yehuda hold that in the first case where there's only one chacham it's okay, but where there's two chachams it's not okay? Not because of Brera. Ein Achanami, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the Brera. This is what the Gemara is going to suggest. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the Brera. And we see from here that you don't say Brera. Because if he said Brera, then he would say that even in the case of two chachams you can go ahead. So if he doesn't say Brera, then the case of two chachams makes a lot of sense. You can't go because you don't say Brera. Why, in fact, then, can I go when he ends up only being one chacham and he ends up coming here? Why can I go there? because the din, this case specifically, is where what? He was already there on Friday before I put the Erev out. Therefore, there was no breira. I put out this Erev al Tanai that he's already there. And I put out this Erev al Tanai that he's already there. And Lamaisa, he happened to have not been there, therefore this Erev is nothing. But it's not a din in breira. I couldn't have done that in the case where he's not there yet, because by definition, if he's not there yet, and I say I'm putting it out al Tanai that he's going to be there, that's breira. But if I say al Tanai that he's already there, then whichever one he's already at, so therefore again, you see that according to this brisa, it's a beautiful brisa, it's complicated, but according to this brisa, Rabbi Yehuda is not saying anything about breira. He doesn't hold the breira. Therefore, if you wake up Shabbos morning and you decide you want to go to this one or that one, doesn't work, of course. If you wake up Shabbos morning, or even if you come Friday night or Shabbos morning and you find out that he ends up to be at that town, you can't go. Even if you put out the Erev on Friday afternoon, because we don't deal with breira. Only case you can go is if you put it out on Friday morning, the Chacham was already in the town, and you made a Tanai on both ones, wherever one he already is, that's the one I want to kick in. It's not a din in breira, it's a din in Tanai. But the Meister, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the breira. If Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the breira, so now we go back to what we said before. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the breira. Well, let's say the Rabbi Yehuda breira. Therefore what? Therefore, where does Rabbi Yehuda say that you can shacht on Yantif for? You can't shacht on Yantif. There's no breira. And therefore we have to throw out this whole discussion we were having if you're going to discuss that what? That in Avela you can't eat, Me'er Shabbos, it was a Muchan, you're going to start talking about all these other things. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no breira now. So what's the story? What's going on? Says the Gemara, Ella Marav Yosef Rabbi Yehuda de Kalim. So let's erase everything that we did until now, and let's go back again. We're trying to figure out where it says Asura Ba'achila Liyoma, that when you shach something on Shabbos you can't eat it that day. Which Rabbi Yehuda is that? Don't start throwing around Rabbi Yehuda over there, and Rabbi Yehuda of cutting up nevelas, and Rabbi Yehuda of giving nevelas to klavim, and breira, this and that. It doesn't hold the breira. So which Rabbi Yehuda is it that says that if you shacht on Shabbos you can't eat it? It's the Rabbi Yehuda of Kalim. What's that? It's none. Kola Kalim anitalin b'Shabbos, shivrei anitalin mavachi yosin me'en malacha, shivrei ariva l'chasas ben pi chavis, shivrei zechuchis l'chasas ben pi apach. The Gemara says that according to Tanakama, if you have a keli that you can use on Shabbos, let's say you have a bowl, a shivrei areva is a mixing bowl. Let's say you have a mixing bowl, or you have a glass vase. So anything you can move on Shabbos. You can move a mixing bowl on Shabbos, you could use a glass vase on Shabbos, you could put anything into it. If it breaks on Shabbos, so what? You can use it as long as it could still be used as a kli. So for instance, if the mixing bowl breaks on Shabbos, you can use the pieces of the mixing bowl to cover up a chavis, to cover up a barrel. If the glass vase breaks on Shabbos, you could still use it to cover up the top of your wine bottle. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no. Uvevachi osin mein malachtan. You can't just use it for another. You can't use it for a different type of kli. That's not allowed. You can only use it for the same type of kli. That means you can only use it for, let's say the mixing bowl breaks and there's little pieces now. You can still use it to store things. Just like you could use the mixing bowl to put salad into, you could still use the little broken mixing bowls now to put salad into. You could use the broken glass to put some shemen into, some oil into, because it was used for shemen. It was just a much bigger glass before Shabbos. But it has to be used for the same malacha. Not me'ein malacha, but me'ein melachtan, the same malacha. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shivachi Yosin Me'ein Melachtan, Shivri Areva Latzok L'tochan Makveh. This mixing bowl that broke, you can only use it not to put on top of a chavis, because that's for a totally different purpose. That's a different type of kli. It's going from being a bowl to being a cap. That you can't do. Chamim say that's okay. It's still a kli, it's still part of the same kli. Rabbi Yehuda says no, to use it for the same purposes. It has to go from being a bowl to being a bowl. A big bowl to a miniature bowl. Says the Gemara, you can use it only for like a makveh to put in this type of food. What do you see? Me'ein malachtan in, me'ein malacha acheres lo. You can only use it for the same exact kli, not for a different type of kli. What do you see according to Rabbi Yehuda? Alma kevan delo itkin me'edmo laha malacha asirei, hachanami kevan delo itkin me'edmo lasura. Why can't you use it as a top of a wine bottle? Because yesterday it was set aside as a mixing bowl. If it's set aside as a mixing bowl, it wasn't set aside to be used as a cap of a bottle. Therefore, Lamaisa, now that it breaks, you want to use it as a cap of a bottle, it hasn't been set aside. So too as well, this animal, which was set aside yesterday for what? Was set aside yesterday to be nolad, or to, whatever you want to say, to work. And now all of a sudden, what? You shacht it. Also, over here, Lamaisa, you can't use it. It wasn't set aside for eating yesterday. So it's a similar...
Is this the sugya for pop bottles? You can't open the top?
No, this is not the sugya.
It's still set aside, but not set aside for Shabbos, because you can't shecht it on Shabbos.
It's not set aside for Shabbos.
Right.
Says the Gemara, Amalei Abayi, mi dami. You can't compare the cases. You can't compare them. Hasa meikara kli v'hashta shever kli, v'havale nolad v'aser. Hacha meikara ochla v'luvatsov ochel. It's interesting. The Gemara is suggesting that that case would be worse. I mean, you have an animal, and again, like we said before, an animal is set aside for eating, even though you haven't yet shechted, it's just missing the shechita. So even if you're going to say that over there, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you have a mixing bowl, which is set aside as a mixing bowl to hold salad, and it breaks, you cannot then use it as what? You cannot use it as a cap, because that piece that broke is nolad. It's a new creation now. It went from being a mixing bowl, a part of a mixing bowl, to being a cap of a chavis, of a barrel. That's not okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean, again, we're using that as the basis. We see that if Rabbi Yehuda says that's a problem, so too it would be a problem to eat the shechita on Shabbos. Why? Maybe over there where it changed items, it became a brand new kli, that's where it would be a problem. But if you have the same animal that was standing there before Shabbos and now on Shabbos you shecht it, you shouldn't have shechted it, but now that you shecht it, it should be okay. Says the Gemara, rather what? So the Gemara says we must have another, so the Gemara rejects that comparison. Then the Gemara says, well, we have another comparison. Uchla de ifrasu. That when you have an animal, which then is shechted, it's like food coming out of food. It means this very animal became the food. Maybe one would say, again, this is more of a proof that even if he holds that you can't switch the salad bowl to be a cap, maybe in Echanami he would say that you can use the what? You can use the animal that was there before Shabbos. If you shecht it on Shabbos, which you shouldn't do, you can eat it on Shabbos. Where do you see this? So if ochla dami. If ochel comes from ochel, it's shaper dami. There's a lot of yisodistic brises here. It's none. We have this famous brisa in sochten et aperos haotzim and mashkin. You can't squeeze oranges on Shabbos. It's chita. The Tanakh says even if it comes out on its own, you can't drink it on Shabbos if it flows out by itself, because we're worried that what? You're going to squeeze it. Or maybe it's nolad. I don't know. It's not clear according to Chachamim whether it's nolad. Maybe it's a gzera shema yischot. Unclear.
No, it's not nolad. I don't think.
It's probably not nolad. Again, it could be according to the Chachamim, but definitely what?
They're worried about the eventually going to squeeze it.
Eventually going to squeeze it. Shema yischot. Seemingly that would be the reason. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends what type of orange it is. If it's an eating orange, then we don't have to be worried. That means hayotzim and mutter. Even if a little bit comes out and you drink it, we're not worried you're going to go ahead and squeeze this orange. You don't squeeze this orange. It's an eating orange. But if it comes from what? Im lamashkin hayotzim mehan aser. But if it comes from one that's meant for squeezing, then I'm going to be nervous. Rabbi Yehuda is just a little bit more mekil, and he says that if it's an eating orange, you don't have to be worried for what? You don't have to be worried to go ahead and squeeze it. But what do you see from here? That there's no issue of nolad here. It's only an issue of shema yischot. According to Rabbi Yehuda, and maybe as you're saying, according to Chum as well, there's no issue of shema nolad that what? That you have juice that's coming from an orange, because the juice is part of the orange. So too over here, the animal, which is the animal itself, there might be a din of whatever you're saying, right? There might be a din in muksa, but there's no din in actual nolad of something that's coming from the animal. Says the Gemara, Lavid Mar Lamar Yehuda Mar Shmuel Modei Rabbi Yehuda Lechachamim Besali Zeisim Anavim. He does agree by a basket of Zeisim and Anavim that even if you set them aside to go ahead and to eat them, since Rov Adam Rov people squeeze olives and squeeze grapes, even if you go ahead and you set them aside to eat them, if a little bit of stuff comes out of them, you can't eat it because you might come to squeeze it. So the Gemara wants to prove that from here, Lamaisa, you can't squeeze them since most people shech them, since most people squeeze them. So to over here, since it says l'shchita kaime yayiv daite, and Lamaisa, the Gemara wants to suggest that we're going to make a gezerah that you can't shech, you can't eat it on Shabbos. The Gemara wants to suggest you can't eat it if it's shechted on Shabbos because you might come to actually shecht it on Shabbos. Interesting gezerah. Till now we were talking about muksa and this and that. Now the Gemara is suggesting no, maybe there's a gezerah that if you go ahead and you eat the shchita that was shechted on Shabbos, really alts muksa and alts nolad, there's no problem. It's a separate gzeira, just like Shema Yischot. It's a separate gzeira that if we let you eat the meat on Shabbos, you might come to shecht on Shabbos. Says Gemara, I don't like that. Midi utayim el Rav, Hamarav Chalakai Rabbi Yehuda afilu b'silei zeisim v'anavim. This whole thing is according to Rav, and Rav actually argues. And Rav says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you could actually go ahead and you can drink the stuff that comes out of grapes and out of anavim, even if they were meant for what? Even if you said that they were meant for eating. Says Gemara, Elamar Rav Sheshes Breder Ravidi. So again, you have no proof here as to why Rabbi Yehuda, if you're rejecting the fact that it's not based on Shema Yischot or Shema Yishchot, we have no reason again why Rabbi Yehuda is holding that an animal that's shechted on Shabbos cannot be eaten. If it's not a din in nolad, because again, he holds that stuff that comes out of something is not necessarily a problem. It's not a din in nolad. It's not a din in muksa, we said. So what's the reason that you can't eat something that was shechted on Shabbos? Elamar Rav Sheshes Breder Ravidi. We'll end with this. Rabbi Yehuda de Neiros he. You see it from Rabbi Yehuda of Neiros. Titania, metaltalin ner chadash avaloyash div Rabbi Yehuda. We're not talking about an actual nair. We're talking about, it seems like a bowl where they would put in oil and they would light a wick in the bowl. So what happens if you have a brand new bowl, it's clean, you can use it on Shabbos because even though you can't use it as a nair on Shabbos, you can use it as a salad bowl. No problem, it's interchangeable. But if it's already been used, then it's muksa on Shabbos because you're never going to use it for anything else. Muksa machmas mius. There's a muksa that's the muksa machmas miyus. If something's disgusting, you're never going to use it for anything else. Therefore, this is muksa machmas miyus. So the Gemara wants to say, just like you see the Rabbi Yehuda holds that there's muksa machmas miyus, he's going to say that this animal is muksa machmas iser. It's a different type of muksa, but it's muksa machmas iser. Because this animal was usher to eat when Shabbos came, because it wasn't shachted. Therefore, it stays usher the entire day. But maybe it's only over there. Maybe he's only usher by muksa machmas mius that you can't use it on Shabbos. Maybe muksa machmas isser he doesn't hold of, and therefore if you shachted on Shabbos, even though it was usher before Shabbos, einach hanami, you can go ahead and you can eat it on Shabbos. Says the Gemara he does hold the muksa machmas isser. Titnan, Rabbi Yehuda Omer kol neiros shel matechas metaltalin. You can go ahead and you can move any neiros of matechas. Again, matechas doesn't get what? It doesn't get mos, even if it gets dirty. Why? Because you can always wash it. You can wash it off. Nechoshes, etc. It doesn't get dirty. Only the ones that are earthenware, which it absorbs the oil. Chutz min haner sheiliku bo be'osa Shabbos. But a ner that was lit before Shabbos started, even though it's not a din in miyus, you can use it because it's muksa machmas isser. Therefore, you hold that you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds a muksa machmas isser as well, and therefore at this point of the Gemara, we're assuming that what? Muksa machmas isser would be the reason that you can't go ahead and eat that animal. So as the Gemara, v'dilma shani hasam to have a dachile biyadayim. No. Maybe Lamaisa, yes, he holds a muksa machmas mius, and he holds a muksa machmas isser. But over here, what? He lit it. Bein hashmashos. He made it muksa machmas isser by lighting the candle before Shabbos. Shehidliku bohaner. Aval behema dimemela midche emar dahadar chazia. Maybe it's only muksa machmas isser where you make this ner usser by going ahead and lighting it before Shabbos. That's going to be set aside, and now you can't use it on Shabbos. But maybe this animal which you didn't do anything to, it was just in the field. It was always royal achila. It was always fit to be eaten. It was just missing the shechita. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda would still hold that in a chanami, if it's shachted on Shabbos, it would be okay to eat even on Shabbos after the fact.